Buongiorno Marco, come stai?
Buongiorno Martin, bene grazie. E tu come stai?
Sì, molto bene, benissimo. E oggi è l'episodio 5 o
Eccellente.
il quinto episodio?
Il quinto
Sì?
episodio, molto bene. Sì, episodio 5 o quinto episodio.
Yeah, there you go. See, I fell over that a little bit this week. So that just to explain to everybody, if anyone's wondering what on earth we started with here, if you say this is episode five, then it will be the word five, cinque. But if you say it's the fifth episode, then you have to be careful to say quinto, which we did talk about in a previous podcast. And if you weren't listening to it, you can always go back and listen to it now. It's
Yes,
available, isn't it, Marco?
it is available and it will be forever. Also remember that if you say cinque, that does not change with gender and number, but if you say quinto, it could be quinta if it's a feminine noun. So episodio is masculine, so we're fine. But if it was la quinta volta, then you would need to worry about that ending. But we'll talk about that more in the future because masculine and feminine are annoying, aren't they, Martin?
Well, that's interesting that you refer to them as annoying. Um, I suppose, I suppose, yes, you could say that there are occasions where, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, aren't you? If you're learning a language and there are masculines and feminines, you're going to be tripping up over these things. So yes, it's worth thinking about.
Yes. And I would say in English is the same as the S. And the S is one of the biggest issues for English learners because it is at the end of plural nouns and it is at the end of he and she in verbs. So to a foreigner, it feels like there's a bunch of S's. Sometimes it's singular, sometimes it's plural, and you have to put them in the right place so people will not understand. I would say masculine and feminine, singular and plural endings in Italian are kind of the same thing. It's a big topic and it's so easy to make mistakes.
Ah, you're talking about the S on the end of words in English, like the end of a noun to make it plural.
Correct.
Right, okay, yeah. So there are so many words like fish
There you
and
go.
sheep and deer where you don't do this. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've said interesting three times already in this episode. You need to take that
Huh, interesting. I will take that out. Absolutely. So you'll be told that we tend to repeat the same words over and over again. Apparently, I have a problem with absolutely, and Martin has a problem with what was it? Okay.
out. Well, there are quite a few things. I'm not going to reveal them because maybe people might turn our episodes into drinking games, and that's not
Yes,
what this is about.
but I would love that. So if you do drink to our podcast, please tweet at us at ItaliAndiamo on Twitter or hashtag ItaliAndiamo or ItaliAndiamo podcast, and we'll be happy to repost any drinking game that you suggest.
Wow, wow. Okay, this is so full of educational value already.
That yeah, I will see what I live in and what I take out of these first few minutes. We went
Yeah,
way off the
I think
rails.
I think some people are tuning in purely for the entertainment value. So, and
Absolutely.
hey, and then they talked about some Italian.
Every now and again that happens too. Yes. But actually, we did add something new about Italian, didn't we, Martin? With these little dialogues that we will put at some point in this episode. It will be a surprise. Where, what was the idea?
Well, the idea was it's practicing what we have mentioned so far because yeah, we do tend to waffle on about things and cultural things, which I feel are very important. But the actual Italian that we have taught, we need to keep returning to. So we thought perhaps we finish every episode with some kind of a dialogue, and there will be a question to answer, or maybe two questions.
Even three. Not more than three though, because we don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
So yes, if you want to practice a little bit of Italian and understand a little bit of listening, maybe try to play a role in a dialogue. Stick until the end, and that we'll start this today.
Sì, per favore, which leads nicely on to polite words, because
Yes,
we do say things like per favore and grazie quite often in these podcasts, but we've never actually introduced them. So
correct.
let's
Indeed.
do some polite words.
I'm trying to avoid the word absolutely. You might notice. Yes, there are definitely a lot of words that we can and should use when speaking Italian to kind of soften a little bit, the blow. Think about English. If you say "I want that," it can come across as a bit harsh. Same as in Italian. We do not want to say "voglio quello," but we have ways to say the same thing that are a bit nicer, and we should try to do that when we can.
Great. Let's start with the ones that people are going to come across the most then. And the first one is grazie.
Grazie, and That's how we pronounce it. Actually, it's one of the most mispronounced words in the word. Grazie.
Grazie.
Very good. You do hear that E at the end, so E at the end, which a lot of people don't say. They would say something like grazie. No, it's grazie.
Yeah, but then in normal speaking, when you're talking to someone and they're just like throwing out a quick thanks at the end of a conversation, would they just, is it never ever skipped over? Would you never hear someone say, "Oh, grazie"?
Oh yeah, yes. It can be kind of going down in volume. But the thing is, I think a lot of languages kind of put vowels together when they're more than
Mhm.
one, close together. So A, E, I, O in Italian. If you think French, if you have an A and another vowel, it can turn into anything. English is the
Yeah.
same. If you have more than one vowel close together, it can change as much as it wants. In Italian, generally speaking, we never do that. So, for example, we have a crazy word that you don't need to learn, but it's always fun to mention. That is aiuole. I try and say that, Martin.
Aiuole.
Very good. And that refers to the flower pots on streets. You don't need to know this word,
Huh?
but it's just an example that when we have four vowels, A, I, U, O, close together, we just pronounce each and every one of them. Aiuole.
Aiuole.
Yeah,
Okay, I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very, very
Aiuole.
useless, but you could impress a lot of people by saying that.
Grazie mille.
Prego. And that leads perfectly into the answer to grazie. The easiest answer is obviously going to be prego.
Prego,
Very good.
which means you're welcome.
Yes, I was actually thinking if you want to say the whole thing. So basically, grazie means graces. So basically, I'm hoping good things happen to you, and prego means I pray for you. So it again, it comes from our deeply religious past. But today, this is completely lost on people, and we just say grazie, prego, as you say, thanks, you're welcome in English. It's not really about the meaning anymore. It's about we've done this for hundreds of years. We're not going to change now.
And prego does get used though in other situations, doesn't it? So if you go into a restaurant and you say, "Oh, un tavolo per quattro, per favore," the waiter, waitress, when they take you to the table, will often say prego, and it's almost as if come with me.
Very good. Yes. In that case, it's also used in a completely different meaning. It just means something like follow me or come with me, as you said correctly.
So, but there will be, I guess, a myriad of other situations where I get, and again, in a restaurant, if somebody puts food in front of you, sometimes they will also say prego.
Yeah, yeah. Prego in sorry, prego in that case could be something like there you go in English. So it again loses meaning completely, and it can be used in any situation in which you're encouraging someone to do something. Maybe there is a public speaking, and you're giving someone else the word. You're just saying, okay, prego. You can
Mm.
start.
Okay. Grazie. Then I mentioned grazie mille as you said, it's almost like a thousand prayers. Or,
Yeah.
but what are there other ways? Like we have lots of thanks very much, thanks a million, thanks blah blah blah. What other common grazie things are there?
Well, first of all, you could use the verb ringraziare, which is kind of a long one, but you could say something like ti ringrazio,
Ti ringrazio.
correct, which means I thank you.
Right. Okay. Would it be correct to say grazie molto?
You could say grazie molte, because
Molte.
grazie, very good, yes, because grazie, technically
Right.
speaking, is feminine plural. Although we don't usually hear that, because usually, again, it's used as a standalone word. But if you want to attach an adjective to it, you need to change gender and number. So grazie molte or molte grazie. That's commonly heard.
Okay. That's many, many thanks then.
Hmm.
And just like you've got thousand thanks, could you have million thanks?
You can use it, although it's not very common. You could say grazie un milione or un milione di grazie. But again, I mean, obviously I know what you're saying, but it's not something that we naturally say.
Okay. Right. And then let's move on to please.
Molto bene. As you said before, per favore is the most common way to say it.
Per favore. Two
Okay,
words.
two words, correct. And it's not por favore, it's per.
Per.
Yes.
As in for.
For, very good. If you speak Spanish, Italian per is the same as Spanish por and para. English for is closer to Italian per.
Per favore. Okay, please. Are there any other ways of saying please?
You could say, if you want to be even more intense, you could say ti prego, which is not prego, not to be confused. And ti prego literally means I pray you, I beg you. So if it's more than a favor you're asking, it's something very important to you. Ti prego, please help me.
Ti prego. Okay, that's good. Right, any other polite words? One I keep thinking about that we mentioned as well at the beginning of episodes. We've said welcome.
Oh, true. We
No.
didn't say it today, I think.
No, I don't think we did.
Well, sorry. So welcome. How would you say welcome, Martin?
I'm going to get it wrong now, but I think it's benvenuti.
Very good. Yes. So this is one of the words that we need masculine, feminine, singular, and plural for. It's benvenuto if you're speaking to one person masculine, and then it becomes benvenuta, benvenuti, benvenute. So for now, let's just say benvenuto, because when we do not know the gender and number, usually the default is the masculine singular form. So benvenuto is what you would expect to hear if speaking to anybody.
Right. So, but if I'm welcoming more than one person, I would say benvenuti, which is why we said that at the beginning of episodes, because we hope we've got more than one listener. Okay, so we kind of understand welcome then. I was just going to, it just reminded me of something that if you ever get the chance to go to Japan, there are people employed in department stores, and all they do all day is just say welcome. And everybody coming in and out, all they do is bow and say irashaimase, 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 like thousands and thousands of times a day.
Wow.
And you don't get that in Italy. I never walked into a shop and somebody said benvenuto.
No, this is interesting because it's actually, if as an Italian, if you go, especially, I find that a lot in the United States, people will chat you up in shops, like, the attendant or the clerk, or they will, say, how are you doing? And I'm like, leave me alone.
Yes. Yeah, it's a strange. Different cultures like doing different things. You're right. As soon as you walk into a store in the US, straight away someone's going to be like, "Hey, how can I help you today?" There's an Italian expression. Is it dare un occhio? I'm just looking. Or
Sì.
Yeah.
Do un occhio, you could say, or do un'occhiata, even better. I give an eye hit. Occhiata would be like the hit of the eye, or something like that. So do un'occhiata. I'm looking.
Do un'occhiata.
Okay.
Because an occhio is an eye. Yeah?
Occhio is an eye. So occhiata would be like, it's hard to translate literally, but if you say, for example, una manata, that would be the hit you give with a hand, right? Una manata, right. like a slap sort of thing. So occhiata would be the hit you could give with the eye if you could throw your eye around. I'm throwing my eyes around, something like that is what it sounds like.
Right. So the art of thing, because I'm thinking about things like la sera is the evening, but you also have the serata. You have giornata is the day. So this is something we're going to come across more and more, maybe.
It is a fairly common ending, and as in English, you have endings that are used very often. So in English, if you think the ly ending, like clearly, obviously, absolutely, that's a very common pattern that is used maybe in different contexts, but the same is in Italian. You have the mente ending, then you have the ata. That's very common, and I'm sure there is more than that. I've never thought about it, but good point. Actually, it's a fairly common pattern, I would say.
All right, so just to make sure that people have got that, I could say do un'occhiata.
Good.
I'm just looking.
Do is the verb dare, so I give. Un with an apostrophe because occhiata is feminine, and then occhiata. OCCHIATA. And I got that in the first attempt, Martin. That was not the first attempt.
Yeah, you didn't have to change that at all.
No.
Okay, so we've walked into a shop and someone said benvenuto, and we've replied do un'occhiata. What else might you get if you walked into a shop?
Well, something you might say, first of all, if you want to get someone's attention, if you want to say, excuse me, or, I'm sorry. In Italian, we could say the same word for both excuse me and I'm sorry. How would you say something like that, Martin? If you have to talk to someone, so maybe, you're trying to get their attention, what's the word you would use?
If it was you, I would say scusi. But if it was someone I hadn't met before, and I was just wanting to get their attention and being polite, I would say scusa.
Okay, perfect, but just the other way around. Um,
Oh no!
yes, I know. This is one of the most annoying thing. So, scusa is the informal version, tu, whereas scusi is the formal version, lei scusi, although the lei you don't say.
Right, I'm just thinking now, and again, this is something that's way in another episode, but this is the imperative then, isn't it?
It is the imperative, and then scusi technically is borrowed from the subjunctive, but it's used as an imperative, which is basically giving an order. You can give an order to a tu, so tu scusa. You don't usually say the tu in this case. It sounds very harsh if you say tu scusa. You just say scusa. Or if you're giving an order to a third person, which is also used as the formal you in Italian, you would say scusi.
Okay, so when we walk into a shop and we've never met someone before in our lives, we would say scusi.
Good. That's the way we would do. As Italians, we tend to be a lot more formal, especially with older people than other countries and cultures. So that's what would be expected of an Italian. Obviously, as a tourist or as a foreigner, we would hear your accent. We would not be offended if you just, use the informal you. That's fine. But if you want to be very correct, you would say scusi, and then you would conjugate all verbs that you use in the third person, so he or she, as opposed to the second person.
Would it be right ever in saying mi scusi?
Good, yes. Mi scusi, it's, excuse me, as opposed to
Yeah.
excuse alone, which is what scusi would be. They're both fine, but generally speaking, I would say it's better to avoid saying the me, because mi scusi, formal, works, but mi scusa, informal, sounds very harsh. So it's not something you should say. And I don't know why. There is no real reason, but just we don't say it this way. We would rather say scusami in that at that point, which is again very advanced topics. Attaching pronouns to verbs is something we do, but not something you should worry about right now.
Right. I'm thinking also here with the way that we're using scusa and scusi, it almost is becoming sorry. So how would you say sorry while we're doing this?
That works. You could just say scusa or scusi. If you're hitting someone, for example, if you're bumping into someone on the street, you would turn and say scusi. Or custom, that's more Italian. But, if you want to be polite, you would say scusa or scusi. You could say also mi dispiace.
Mi dispiace.
Very
Yeah, I've
good.
heard that.
Very
Yeah.
good. And obviously, we know that mi piace means I like. Mi dispiace does not mean I dislike as much as just I'm sorry, I'm displeased or something like that. And maybe displeased is the closest in English, although it's not probably very used. So that's more clearly I'm sorry. If you say mi dispiace, if you're getting someone's attention in a shop, you would not say mi dispiace. They would assume you broke something.
Right. Very good. But that's great because we've not talked about mi piace, and I'm sure it's going to come up soon. But I'd never thought about putting dispiace in the same thought in my head as mi piace, and that's great. We'll return to that as well. Lots of things we're going to return to here. This is really quite fascinating.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that, Martin, because the thing with learning Italian or any language is that at the beginning it's very straightforward. You start with simple things and then you progress, and as you progress, there are more and more things that start showing up, and you're like, okay, we'll talk about that later. And it just keeps adding. It's normal. It's the way languages work. It's impossible to speak about things without speaking about more things. And the more we progress, the more this is going to happen. And we cannot explain everything at once. Otherwise, it would be 6, 7 hours of a single episode, which I guess even our most loving listeners would not stand 6 or 7 hours of us blabbing about Italian, Martin.
Well, that's just sad. But okay.
Yes.
Right. So I'm in a shop and I've got somebody's attention, and there's something I would like. So what I would like.
Good. That's a lovely question. So those of you that are more advanced would know that the verb to want is volere. So they might assume that they could say io voglio, I want. But as in English, you don't say I want, right? It's kind of harsh. You rather make it smoother. And you could say it, it's not gonna, be a problem as a foreigner. Again, you cut a lot of slack. But there is a word that you should learn, Martin, and everybody watching or listening, I guess, should learn, which is the word vorrei.
Vorrei.
Very
Double
good.
R.
Very good. VORREI. Vorrei.
Right. So that is I would like.
Very good. That's
So
I would like.
so I could say I would like and then what? Just point at something, or how would I get around that part?
Very good. That's a very good example. So if you know, for example, the word for what you would like, let's say you walk into a bar and you just say vorrei un caffè, I would like a coffee.
Yeah, vorrei un caffè.
That works perfectly. You do not need to know that vorrei is a conditional and it's the first person singular. You just say that vorrei is what you say when you want to say I would like. And then the rest of the verb you don't care about. It's a fairly advanced tense. Most of us don't care about conditional at this point. But if you don't know the name, this is a very good point, Martin. Let's say that you're looking at, for example, something in a cake. You don't know what the name is of cake. You don't know how to say cake, torta, but that doesn't matter. How would you say that? You could just point and say vorrei quello.
Quello. So quello is that.
Quello is that. It's a masculine singular. At this point, we don't care about masculine and feminine, but let's say that the default way when you do not know the name of something is just to say quello, that, as in English. So vorrei quello is a very useful phrase. It's two words. Just, remember them because it will save you many problems when you do not know the name of things. Vorrei quello. And then you could say per favore.
And I guess, yeah, that's a very good point. Adding per favore afterwards would soften the blow as well. But even I know that the other way of saying that, like the feminine way, is quella. But I guess even if, let's say, like you, as you've referred to the cake torta, which is feminine, if by mistake I walked into a shop and said, "Buongiorno, vorrei quello per favore," and pointed at the cake, people are going to know what I'm talking about. And they'll probably help me, won't they, as well, on that occasion?
Completely, yes. I didn't say absolutely. Because the point is, if you do not know the name of something, you assume it's masculine. Masculine is the default gender in Italian when it comes to objects. So if you don't know something, that cake might have a masculine name. It might be called, I don't know, San Martin, for example. It could be San Martino, and you could have to say il San Martino, un San Martino. You do not know that. So if you are unsure about something's name, it's always fine to use quello for an object. That's always understood, and that's the way Italians would say, generally speaking, when they're pointing at something that they do not know or remember the name of.
Great. Well, that's really helpful then. So we've got vorrei quello, and if you do know it's feminine, you could say vorrei quella per favore. So that's like saying I would like that, please. How about if it's something that's near to you and you want to say this, I would like this.
Good question. And the translation for this in Italian is questo.
Vorrei questo per favore.
Yes. So that's maybe more common if you're pointing at a menu or something that is very close to you. You could say vorrei quello and point at something. It's still fine. But if you want to say this as opposed to that, is questo. So questo, this, quello, that.
Okay. And if I walked into the shop, just to round this off, and I've picked the cake up and I've got it already under my arm, ready to leave the shop, I could say vorrei questa, per favore.
If you know it's a cake and cake is feminine, you could definitely say that. If you do not know that cake is feminine, you could just say vorrei questo or just questo, per favore. And that's just about enough. I mean, obviously, very often context will be your friend. If you obviously are showing up at a cashier with something in your hands, often you do not even need to say anything because it's obvious what's going on, right? So even if what you say is not 100% correct, usually it's close enough to be obvious.
Context is your friend. That's another t-shirt. I like that.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Brilliant. Every episode, and I said brilliant.
Brilliant.
Every
Absolutely.
episode. Perhaps absolutely could be another one that goes on a t-shirt. Or maybe assolutamente might be more appropriate.
That could be even catchier. Absolutamente. Good.
That's great. Right, well, I think we've talked about quite a lot of interesting cultural and linguistic things in this episode, or
Yes.
these episodes, depending on how they're split up at the end of it.
Wow.
And I think from there we should probably say again, just to remind people that once we finish here, there will be conversations
Yes.
following.
Correct.
And we very much encourage you to come back to us with the answers. There will be answers available. How do they get
Yes.
the answers, Marco?
We will definitely tweet them out. So if you follow our hashtag, hashtag ItaliAndiamo podcast, you will find them on Twitter. Or you could just go and find our handle at ItaliAndiamo. We just created it, so basically nobody's following it. But you can just find us there, and you will find the answers in the Twitter. If you are too lazy, we will also give out the answers next week.
But again, we'll just invite you to ask us any questions. Please get in touch.
We read everything, we reply to everyone.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a te Martin e grazie a tutti. Thanks Martin and thanks to everybody.
Alla prossima.
Sì, alla prossima. Ciao.
Ciao.
And now, 3 simple dialogues. Can you get the answers to the questions right? Good luck. Buongiorno.
Ciao, buongiorno.
Scusa, ma che ore sono?
Adesso sono le 8.
Ah, grazie.
Prego, ciao.
Arrivederci.
What time was it? Buonasera Marco, come stai?
Sto bene, grazie. E tu?
Sì, benone. Che giorno è oggi?
Oggi è venerdì, quasi il fine settimana.
Fantastico. A dopo.
Ci vediamo dopo, Martin.
Okay, so what day is it?
Scusa, come ti chiami?
Mi chiamo Martin. E tu?
Mi chiamo Marco, piacere.
Quanti anni hai?
Ho 31 anni. E tu?
Ho 54 anni. So the question is, how old are they both? Or how old are we?